You know, maybe I've been too harsh on archers in FFT. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel. Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, including my coverage of various topics surrounding turn-based strategy RPGs such as Final Fantasy Tactics, then a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. So what are we talking about here today? Well, similarly to what I did for my Fixing Knights video that came out most recently in the Fixing All Jobs in FFT series, I've been going through and getting footage together for the Fixing Archers video. And in so doing, I had the thought, well, it was kind of fun checking out a random battle with AI-controlled knights against the computer to see how they would function, right? Now, granted, that was against one of possibly the most difficult AI-controlled battle in the game with the 11-monk Grow Hill fight, but knights generally are more capable than archers, so I figured if the knights can fold to that, then archers will probably fold to a lot less, right? I might not be so right in that assumption. Now, granted, not exactly a fair fight for the knights here, as I put a little bit more time into setting up these archers for their coming battles, but I thought it would be interesting to go through 5 auto battles with fully AI-controlled archers on my team against whatever it is that the computer tried to throw against them and see how well they would fare. And as it turns out, they fared pretty dang well. So, what were the rules for this challenge? The idea was to have a team of 5 AI-controlled archers who would be targeted with the Berserk auto-battle targeting system on whatever I kind of deemed was the most valuable target in the enemy team, so that they could just be let loose and go do what they were going to do. I would have no input beyond their initial setup, and I would not be changing anything over the course of these battles, and my initial intent was to let them battle until they inevitably lost, because I figured it wouldn't take very long. So long as the team won their battle, even if an archer was lost, we would move on to the next battle until we inevitably suffered a loss. As far as the actual setups for these archers are concerned, I'll go through the team now. Note, there wasn't really any particular meta, most efficient setup that I went for. Basically just getting the bog standard strongest bows from the shop that I could, with a little bit of variety in terms of builds, just to have things be a little bit spicy. For our first archer here, we have Clemence. She's using a wind/bow, the Thief's Cap and Mirage Vest, some of the fastest items in the game, as well as Hermes shoes, with the idea being that she would be our speed freak on the team, which of course will also help her damage due to the way that bow damage calculation works. As far as her ability loadout is concerned, everything is focused on items and restoration, as she is typically supposed to be a chemist. So she has items, auto potion, throw items, and life font. Now, surprisingly, as you'll see, she managed to make this a fairly offensive setup, more than I would have expected, especially when the undead are concerned, but overall she proved to be a very efficient combatant. Next up we have Ealdwine, obviously also an archer, and he had a similar setup in terms of speed, not quite as fast because, like, you can't get multiple Mirage Vests or anything like that, and I wasn't going to go out of my way to buy multiple Thieves' Caps to try and completely optimize this team. That said, Ealdwine is rocking a little bit of a different setup. He has Arts of War for some potential ranged gear destruction, stat debuffs, may or may not wind up actually coming into play, you'll have to see for yourself, as well as auto potion to keep himself alive, defend if he has no better targets, which as an archer he should always have a target, but you never know, and then move +3 to make sure that he can always stay in range. After that, we have Folk. Folk was set up as a little bit of a more close-range frontline archer using a crossbow and a shield with some damage-boosting gear and a cloak to help increase his evade. So we have the Gastrophades crossbow and a crystal shield, a lambent hat to help increase his speed, a power garb for damage, which now that I think about it, I don't think actually affects crossbow damage, but hey, it's still decently HP-boosting armor, and then a featherweave cloak to make him a lot more dodgy in melee. We also have Arts of War and Auto Potion here, but with concentration so that it's a little bit more likely he'll be able to hit with that crossbow, and then of course move +2 to make him able to move up onto the front line with relative ease. Obviously, I should state as well, all of these archers are rocking aim, as you have no opportunity to change that. And it did come into play a little bit more often than I would have expected, but it's still a pretty vanilla option, something that we'll talk about in the Fixing Archer video that should be coming out after this one. Richard the Archer has basically a similar setup to Clemens, just a little bit slower, also has a wind slash bow, a green beret, power garb, and Hermes shoes, but this time we have some time magic and the attack boost skill, as well as of course auto potion and move +2 as generally strong options. There's a couple of times that Richard actually used time magic to boost his and his allies' speed using haste, and that attack boost does just generally help with damage, so he managed to actually be a fairly efficient member of the team, even though his overall loadout was not particularly optimized. Finally, we have Crestian the Archer, and she also has a bit of a close-range crossbow and shield build as a little bit of a frontline tank, as much as you can expect with archers in FFT anyway. She also has a Thief's Cap and Black Garb to give her a little bit better HP, as well as a little bit better speed, and a Featherweave Cloak to again help with that evasion. She's also rocking an item setup similar to Clemens, with items, auto potion, and throw items, so that she can help support herself and her allies, while also being a little bit more offensive in certain ways, which again we'll see in some of these battles, and move +1. Now again, is this the most optimal team if you're trying to rock a team of all archers? No, of course not. There's gear that I could go buy, there's better ability setups that I could get, etc., etc. But it's functional enough that I felt like they'd at least have a fighting chance of survival. With the team build out of the way, let's talk about the 5 fights that we're going to be going into here. I won't have much commentary over the fights themselves. I might toss in a comment here and there when something particularly interesting happens, but I will have timestamps for all 5 fights here if there's a particular one that you would like to see. First off, we have what I have dubbed the 3 Stooges, our starter fight that was really not as fair for the enemy as I maybe expected it to be. Then we have Calamari on the Boardwalk, a little bit of a more interesting engagement in a swamp. Remember the Alamo, which I will say gave a very unfair advantage to our archer team. The Ghoulies, which you might be able to imagine, maybe some of our items users were able to make good effect of that skill here. And then finally the High Ground Blues, where we saw a lot of power for our archers, but also a lot of danger for them. You can find timestamps for all of those on the screen here, and I'm going to now roll the footage for you. Here we go. Now, as you can see here with the 3 Stooges, obviously this is not going to be a very fair fight when you only have 3 enemy units that essentially have next to no ranged capabilities, having to run at your entire Gatling gun archer team in a straight line. They don't really have that great of a chance, but it is still interesting to see how the archers are kind of going to behave in their given roles for fights going forward. Now here with Calamari on the Boardwalk, this is where things get a little bit more interesting. We're now properly outnumbered, even if one of those enemy units is a pig that is going to do essentially nothing, and we do have a little bit of difficult terrain that we have to navigate through. However, still a lot of clear sight lines and basically no range damage on the enemy team, so we do have the advantage in that way. Now, interestingly here with Remember the Alamo, we very distinctly get the high ground advantage while we hold this fort. However, this is the first time that we've seen some truly advanced enemy monster classes, and some that could be absolutely devastating if they choose to get into melee. Now, normally you would think, well, how are they going to get into melee if our archers just stay on top of the fort and continue to hold the line? Well, unfortunately, we have a couple of crazy bastards who decide, well, I've got a shield and a crossbow, so why not get down into the middle of the fray like I'm Guts himself, and just go toe-to-toe in melee combat with my arrow-shooting device. A little bit of an interesting decision from some of our team members here, but you'll see it may not play out for them as poorly as I certainly expected it to, and you may expect it to as well. Next up we have the Ghoulies, and I gotta be honest, this one I was particularly worried about our archer team for, with the number of status effects that some of these ghosts can throw around, and the potential surprising tankiness and status effects of a Dryad type unit. There was potential here for some problems, but the advantageous use of some throw items from the ladies maybe made it a little bit more able to be handled than I initially gave it credit for, and perhaps you gave it credit for as well, so I hope you enjoy. Finally, we come to High Ground Blues, and this is the one that really gave our team a run for their money. Finally, we have some capable units with some very powerful ranged damage and the navigability to easily fly up the cliff to negate the high ground advantage that the archers have. We have some tanky units that are going to be able to absorb a lot of hits before they go down, again allowing those more damage-focused flying units to move in. And this is the first time we really saw a lot of threat for our archers. However, I was surprised with some of the maneuvers that they pulled out and some of the targeting that they had. There was a couple of times where unlucky crits or unwise charges led to some major problems for them, but I think as you'll see, they held up pretty admirably, all things considered. So yeah, man, all told, I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed with this archer team. Does that mean that I feel we should not worry about trying to fix the archer class in the upcoming video? No, not at all. I think it's definitely a class that has a lot of issues with it. It's a job that has a lot of unnecessary limitations, and we can see from other Final Fantasy Tactics games, as well as other turn-based strategy RPGs in general, there's a lot of different ways to handle archers to make them more versatile, more capable, and more threatening as a part of your army than they were in FFT. That said, they definitely impressed me. It turns out with just a little bit of tweaking and just a lot of focused fire and maybe a little bit of luck, you can have a full team of auto battle archers and do pretty dang well for yourself. Does that mean that they're going to be able to handle the 11 Mike Grow Hill fight or the Aragway Woods ninja fight? Probably not, but those are dedicated endgame fights that a human player with an optimized team is going to take on as a challenge, not something that you would really expect a not really focused archer team on auto battle to be able to handle. So all things considered, they definitely impressed me. That said, I would like to hear your thoughts on this topic as well. How well do you think this type of fully focused all archers team could do if you really leaned into it, if you really optimized the weapons and items and armor, if you really spec'd them out with specific abilities and really focused on leveling up their stats? Do you think they could perform particularly well in some of the highest difficulty battles in the game, or is there just a certain cap that they're not going to be able to circumvent, especially given how limited the aim skill can be compared to other job skills? I'd love to hear about all of that in the comments down below and what your thoughts are on this challenge video as well. I really enjoy doing these. It's fun to be able to really put the game through its paces and see what different jobs can do. So if you guys are enjoying it as much as me, then I will continue doing them into the future. With that said, though, I'm going to wrap this one up here. My name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.